Every Wednesday, William Henry's Revelations bring you a powerful half hour of information at the cutting edge of reality. Information that you cannot find anywhere else in the world. And now, here's William.
Everyone, I was talking with a friend the other day about his near-death experience, and he said he was propelled out of the Earth's atmosphere and into space. He said he could see distant galaxies and actually travel to them instantly at the speed of thought. And when he returned to Earth, he began investigating the power of thought and the possibility that it travels faster than light. Today, we are joined by someone who's been probing the question of faster-than-light communication and all kinds of other fascinating subjects. David Sereda is an inventor, filmmaker, ecologist, and I would say a visionary. That's why David's a frequent guest on Revelations and Dreamland, and we're happy to welcome him today. Welcome, David.
Good to be here, William.
Wonderful to hear your voice. Couple of things. So I was in Memphis actually this past weekend, David, and a truck driver came up to me and he said, "You ever heard of David Sereda?" And I said, "Well, yeah, he's one of my favorite guests on Revelations. I think he does awesome work." And he says, "Well, I heard him talking one time in an interview about these pendants he makes, so I went and got one." And he said, as a truck driver, he's like a lot of truck drivers. He drives in a lot of pain, and you can't be doing drugs all the time if you're driving, so you need some way to overcome that pain. And he said he pops on your pendant. Next thing he knows, he's feeling really, really good. So I just wanted to pass that along to you.
That is amazing. I get a lot of stories like that, and we don't make medical claims, but there are people who experience more lucid dreams, more energy. Some people, when they lose their pendant, they're like drug addicts. I got to get another one.
Well, I want to talk with you in more detail about those in a minute, but first let's play a little catch up on some other things. The last time you were on Revelations, David, we talked about the sun, and it was just before, actually, 2012. So was everything as we hoped it would be for 2012 and more, or what's your take these days?
Well, so much has happened. I mean, I'm following the sun like the stock market, but there seems to be a stream of earthquakes right now that's occurring, 2 sevens in just 5 days. Mm-hmm. 7 pluses, one in Mexico and one in Chile, grandly in places where there's not a lot of populace and not a lot of injuries, which is what we really want, because the Earth is definitely heading towards some Earth-shifting changes as we move into this new sun, this new sun cycle. When we end in 2013, we're going to end this we're going to peak in this great solar cycle. So there's still lots more to come. And when the sun transfers its electromagnetic energy to the planet, it not only affects tectonic plates and Earth change activity, but it affects our DNA as well. And I see on your website too, you're talking about this big galactic wave bubble that NASA's detected, and there's no doubt that even scientists in the movie Water that we distribute have proven that very weak magnetic field changes can influence and activate DNA. So what we're really hoping for on the positive side is a massive shift in our inability to access all of the circuits, chakras, crystal and liquid crystal circuits in our body, so we can access the higher functions of our brains and our consciousness. And that's probably the number one reason I think we're failing down here, why we haven't, fully developed alternative energy sources and developed flying saucers, which is one of my favorite personal engineering feats I'm working towards. But the reason is the epiphany hasn't happened in the brain. I mean, there are, granted, many, many scientists who have come close and who have developed some very astounding zero-point energy concepts. So the epiphanies are there. Socially, we don't seem to be quite ready for it. A lot of the corporate, structures don't seem to want this technology to come to the surface. But that is even changing now, too. You're starting to see, I was watching this amazing documentary on YouTube by Turjay, the filmmaker from Norway, who made this amazing film about these light phenomena in Norway going on since the 80s, mm-hmm. Associated with UFOs as well as some kind of plasma lights. And he's now got mainstream physicists and scientists so interested in the phenomena that they're looking at it as, possible new discovery or new way to store plasma energy. And the very fact that mainstream scientists are taking it seriously is showing a shift. because they have not taken this subject seriously for a very long time.
Well, I mean, it's a rediscovery, isn't it, of the original sacred science, and maybe now is the time for that. I just took a tour to Egypt, and we were particularly looking at the Great Pyramid as a resurrection machine. I mean, a lot of people have heard of Chris Dunn's theory that the Giza Pyramid is a power plant. Well, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have televisions, they didn't have automobiles, so what were they powering with all of that power? And it seems to me that when you look around the temples of Egypt, what they were powering, it was a spiritual power, and it was all about resurrection and transformation into light beings. What would you say to that, David?
Well, I lectured at the UFO Congress about the theory that the Great Pyramid is a giant, electronic crystal oscillator. And I developed the theory before I'd heard about Chris Dunn's work that it was a generator. But when I saw Chris Dunn's work in the Great Pyramid Decoded, I went, wow, now I know why it needed power. It needed power to start the oscillations in the crystal stone, multi-crystal stone layer materials in the Great Pyramid to set up frequency oscillations. And those frequency oscillations, once you can determine that it's a crystal oscillator, and crystal oscillators are used in radios to tune your radio to a specific frequency. They're used in quartz watches to keep timing because of the very, very fast 36,000 cycles per second oscillations in a quartz crystal, so you can keep very accurate, timing in watches. But more importantly, in some very, very stunning faster-than-light experiments done, one at Berkeley and one at Princeton, the method of breaking the light speed was actually a crystal light source and crystal oscillator experiments using materials, crystalline materials that have pyramidal geometries at the molecular level, what is known as the crystal lattice level. And this one particular experiment, there's two. One was by Dr. Raymond Chow, and this was announced in the 1980s. He uses a down conversion crystal light source and splits two particles of light or photons off of mirrors and sends one of them through a very, very thin sheet of silica or a quartz crystal glass, and the other one goes through ordinary space. And the one that goes through the crystal oscillator silica goes 1.7 times the speed of light, and that is phenomenal when you consider that what is doing it, what is causing it, is what is known as quantum tunneling through the quartz crystal. And the quartz crystal's geometries force the frequency of the ordinary light to go into a super high frequency state and therefore accelerate beyond light speed. And when you look at the actual geometry of what quartz is, it is a three-sided tetrahedron pyramid.
Okay.
And so I wanted to know, what is it about pyramidal geometries that cause this acceleration? And could the Great Pyramid of Egypt be a giant crystal oscillator not only for faster-than-light communication, but like you're saying, activating the DNA and transforming a physical body into a light body?
Yeah, because the frequency, you said, is in the stone, but it's also in the bones, isn't it? And so if you could get into an environment like the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, it's pure quartz crystal, lots of it, just vibrate yourself right on out of here.
Especially once it's turned on, and I'm going to reveal what I believe is the power source for the Great Pyramid. The next experiment is even more stunning. It was announced in about 2003 or 4. It was all over the news. It's Dr. Li Jun Wang at the NEC lab at Princeton. He gets a light wave to go 300 times faster than the speed of light, which is enough to get to any star system in a very small fraction of time. Once again, he uses a crystal light source, but he sends laser beams through cesium gas, which is actually radioactive. And it went 300 times the speed of light. And what interested me about the cesium chloride gas is its crystal lattice geometry at the molecular level were four-sided pyramids, which are 6 inverted four-sided pyramids. And, of course, that's what the Great Pyramid is. And so when you look at a pyramid and you think of the base of the pyramid as being, imagine a light wave oscillating through the base of the pyramid being a very wide base, and as it goes up to the cone or the top of the pyramid, the wavelength gets really, really small and the frequency gets really high. And that's where quantum tunneling begins, and that's where faster-than-light vibrations begin. That's where I believe it's happening. And, in fact, there's this great, when I was lecturing at the UFO Congress, there's this great photograph on Linda Moulton Howe's earthfiles.com of this guy in the Yucatan with his cell phone camera, his iPhone camera, and he's taking a picture of the pyramids in the Yucatan during a lightning storm. And what's key about a lightning storm is lightning will ionize crystal, meaning it's an electrical source that it causes the electrons in the crystal to jump out of their shells and start spinning or oscillating in circles inside of the geometry. So you get this ionization of a giant crystal oscillator, and hence what's going to happen. In the photograph, a big column of light appears shooting out of the top of the pyramid. And this is, of course, invisible to the naked eye. Well, when Patrick Flanagan wrote Pyramid Power in the 1970s, he did an experiment where he ionized some very small pyramids and took pictures of these cones of light jetting out of the tops of the pyramid. This is all going back to how faster-than-light experiments were happening. So the point is you would need a power source or an ionizer source to do this. Otherwise, you would have to wait until a very rare lightning storm hit the Giza Plateau. And what I found, if you Google the Dendera light in Egypt, and I know you've seen this, William.
Oh, yeah.
I am saying that the Dendera light is not a light bulb. If you look at the picture, you'll see these very tall Egyptian gods, whom I believe are probably Palladian gods or Syrian gods, who are much taller than us. And you'll see humans sitting underneath of it with their hands, together in a kind of ceremony. And you look at the size of this light bulb, it's got to be at least 8 feet long. And if you ever sat next to a 500-watt light bulb, I can tell you'll go blind in a very, very short period of time. Literally blind if you sit close to a 500-watt light bulb. And this thing is way bigger than what we would now call a 500-watt light bulb. I'm saying it's not a light bulb at all. It is an ionizer transmitting device. And what I did is I built one of these things myself because of my electrical background and my electronics background. And I built a crystal oscillator core transmitter. I used rubies and tourmaline, and I put it in a flashlight tubing, and you can see a video of this on Spaceman99, my YouTube channel. And after I determined that the Great Pyramid was a crystal oscillator, I did all the math, and I decoded its actual frequencies, the actual speed of light oscillations in the pyramid, all the way from the base all the way to the top. And I developed 9 levels of 180 different frequencies, incredible stuff. And I transmitted it through my wand, and I put little magnets on dishes. And normally, if I transmit a frequency like 528 or 432, or even the NASA sound of the sun frequency through the wand, the magnets will merely vibrate on the plate. But to my astonishment, with the pyramid frequencies, because they have differentials built into them, non-even numbers from the base of the 4 sides of the pyramid, the magnets start moving around on the plates. I went, oh my God, this is something I've never seen before. These magnets are really zipping around, and I've only got about 50 watts going into this thing. And in that particular video, there are about 48 pyramid frequencies going through the transmitter wand. Now I'm up to 180 that I've decoded. And what's astonishing about this is not only is it leading towards how I know how to build an anti-gravity spaceship, but it is resembling how the planets are actually moving around the sun. Because in a magnetic field, if the sun were merely pumping out frequencies that were not harmonic and were non-differential, the physical magnets, which the planets are, because they contain both rare earth or magnetically chargeable material or even paramagnetic material like copper and aluminum. Copper and aluminum respond to an active magnetic field, meaning they're magnetized while a magnetic transmitter is on. They all respond to differential numbers, and it causes them to spin around and move. And I thought, how the heck could the Egyptians, the numbers that are in the frequencies of the Great Pyramid are so beautiful. And I'm not going to reveal the numbers just yet. I have put them on an audio CD so people can listen to them and experience a sonic form of sound activation. But now I have this wand, which I believe is proof that the Egyptians used this thing on a way larger scale than I built to turn on or ionize the crystal oscillator that the Great Pyramid is. And that the pyramid is in a ratio of Orion's belt as a crystal oscillator set means something even more incredible.
That is totally incredible. David, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, let's pick up on that thought. I'm just absolutely buzzing here with what you're saying, because you're putting pieces of the puzzle that I've been working on for a while right here on the table, and it's actually profound what you're doing. So, David, hang on. We'll be right back. This is Revelations. Hang on.
Thinking about coming to the Dreamland Festival? Well, here's a real surprise for you.
My name is Raven Dana. I had a face-to-face encounter with what appeared to be a small alien at Willie and Ann Strieber's cabin in upstate New York when they were holding groups there. I was fully conscious at the time, and my encounter was part of a night of such experiences with a number of other witnesses also involved. It was an incredible moment in a life of incredible experiences. I'm going to tell you all about it and answer your questions at this year's Dreamland Festival.
Raven Dana, a truly remarkable human being. You'll meet her at the Dreamland Festival. Get your tickets now. Go to unknowncountry.com and click on the store sales point on the upper right.
This is Revelations. We're continuing with David Sereda. Okay, David, gosh, you put about 15 different really key thoughts on the table just before the break. You were talking about the Great Pyramid as a crystal oscillator, as a power source, as a source of a spiritual power that somehow is linked with Orion's Gate. Recently, I've been studying kind of some of the, maybe the fringe religions. You know, the Episcopalians are now talking about this idea that, hey, the transfiguration of Jesus into a being of light, that's a complementary concept to the ecology movement and the environmental movement. And it's like, yeah, right on. You know, you're starting to kind of figure out what's really going on here, and that this shift that we're in here is all about the light body and opening stargates. The Jehovah's Witnesses have this belief that Jesus left through a gateway in Orion and will return through a stargate in Orion. And they've believed this for over 100 years. And so these people have been carrying these very, to us, at least until now, sort of strange beliefs about the universe, that you can transform yourself into a being of light, that you can pop through a stargate, you can travel interdimensionally, you can go to other star systems and back. This is what our time is about, isn't it?
Oh, I absolutely believe that. In fact, the more you study, like Peter Lemaisurier's book, The Great Pyramid Decoded, is probably the first mystical book I ever read, you know, getting out of high school in 1980, you know, in Vancouver, Canada. And now rereading his book years later with, you know, some electronics background, I've been able to use the base of the math in it. And you see, one, you know, during summer solstice, it casts this shadow to Bethlehem and seems to be prophesying the birth of Christ. We know Jesus speaks of the missing capstone. He says, "Show me the stone that the builders rejected, and that will be the chief cornerstone." And he's obviously referring to the capstone on the Great Pyramid that appears to be missing. There is math in the four Gospels, the four known Gospels, that corresponds to the dimensions inside of the Great Pyramid that Peter Lemaiurier points out. And, you know, knowing the Holy Family fled to Egypt from Herod's persecution, and Jesus grew up in Egypt as a young man, and his father was an architect, and we now know not a poor family, but a master architect. He obviously studied the Great Pyramid and meditated and practiced in there. There are dimensions in the King's Chamber, the Ark of the Covenant itself, which just before the phone rang, I just finished the math on the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant converted to primitive inches. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to reveal a number here. This in Peter Lemaisurier's book, the number of the slope of the Great Pyramid, when it had the limestone casings on it, was 51 degrees, 51 feet, and so many inches. That's
right.
Measuring
52,
the 2. So it's a 5151.
Mm-hmm.
And when I took the top perimeter of the Great Pyramid, dimensions in primitive inches, which is the unit of measure most likely for the Egyptians. This is the perimeter of the top. So if there's a missing capstone, you're talking about the perimeter in primitive inches of the base. And when you take the whole base, and the way you get your frequency is you divide it into the speed of light. You take the whole perimeter of the base. And because each side is slightly different, you end up with 4 different frequencies that are very, very slight variations of each other. So the frequency of the capstone base was 5151314. So that's 5.5 megahertz, 5.151 megahertz. And I went, oh my God, that's the 5151. And that's the same number in the degree of angle in the slope of the Great Pyramid. And in Le Mesureur's book, that is the number of enlightenment. Now, this is utterly astounding, and I'm the first person to do this, and this will be the first show in history that this will be on. But the length of the Ark of the Covenant is 2.5 royal cubits, right, long.
Right.
But when you convert royal cubits to primitive inches, you get 51.51 primitive inches.
Wow.
Now, that's the same number, which fits the idea that the Ark of the Covenant was an actual electronic capacitor that used to belong in the coffer in the Great Pyramid, because even with the long poles, it would actually fit inside of that coffer. It is an idea that they didn't have a lot of merit. I mean, there were some good theories, and some people say, well, it's not the exact dimensions of the coffer. But what I can tell you is why would the number of the length of the Ark of the Covenant be 51.51 primitive inches, and the original slope on the Great Pyramid was 5151, and the frequency, which is the perimeter of the top of the pyramid divided into the speed of light, is 5151. I mean, that is astounding.
Well, let me try this one on you, David.
Absolutely astounding.
Yeah, let me try this one on you. I've been researching something. I call it the kit. It's all of the implements of the crucifixion. It's the spear of Longinus, the seamless robe, the sponge, all of these different accoutrements that go towards producing the ultimate end product, which is the resurrection body, the light body, the glory body, the Stargate body, whatever you want to call it. And so I was talking with, and you can go back and reference this, it's very fascinating. It's an interview I did with Gary Osborne about the Great Pyramid, and he was observing how the pyramid angles, especially the 51-51 or rounded off to 52, and also the 23.5 degree angle within the pyramid, have been encoded in Christian art. So I send Gary this illustration from the 16th century that shows all of the instruments of the Passion, the Arma Christi, the robe, the ladder, the spear of Longinus, the sponge. What do you know, David? The angles of everything in that illustration are exactly the angles of the Earth's axis at 23.5 degrees, the slope of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid dimensions. Everything is encoded with this, as if it's trying to say, hey, guys, put the kit together, put the whole thing together, and realize this is a giant Stargate you're dealing with there in Giza, and it's time to get your act together and use it.
I think exactly. You know, what I'm doing with this wand is, you know, the numbers are longer than 5151, and that's only one of 9 sequences of numbers I found in the pyramid, is that with this transmitter wand, you can broadcast that frequency magnetically into your DNA and experience what it actually does to you.
Well, let me ask you this, David. I mean, when you see images of Ptah and the other gods in Egypt, some of them are sailing on their wormhole-shaped boats, etc., the star beings, they often carry that staff that's part Jed, part Uaz, part Key of Life. It's like a triple component staff or wand. And then you will see the Key of Life being offered to various individuals. Then Jesus comes along later, and you see him with his magic wand. Do you think this wand is an actual technology that they possessed that maybe you're on the verge of recreating, or was it an allegory?
No, I think it's an actual technology. Like, you know, the Diged, or I don't know how you pronounce that, because I just learned
Jed, like Jedi, you know, like George Lucas, Return of the Jedi.
I actually built one in my lab, and I use it with the wand. And I think the 4 discs are magnets, because what happens when you transmit electromagnetic...
The 4 discs of the jet, it's like 4 stacked blocks, or it's like there's 4 stacked blocks above the King's chamber that resemble the jet, and so nobody knows what those are, but you're thinking they're magnets.
Well, I theoretically, what I did is I took magnets on a brass shaft with rubber spacers in the little spacers on the jet, and I put north-north magnets together, and what happens is on a staff, they vibrate in the presence of the transmitter. So if the pyramid was turned on, you would need the staff with the magnets to determine if it was actually working, because they start to shake. And ball magnets start to zip around in giant circles, which is really an amazing thing to experience. And you can feel a magnet in your hand near my transmitter wand shaking in your hand. In fact, when I was at the UFO Congress, my table was packed with people, and even a couple of former NASA and Air Force engineers. They said they'd never seen anything like it. Because frequencies transmitted won't cause a magnet to move, but differential numbers, because when I gave out the 5151, that's only the base number. There's a whole bunch of numbers in the decimal that you need to have, and you need to have the 4 differential numbers to cause the magnet to move. Well, what it means is, you see, voltage means difference. It means setting up a differential charge between one point and another to cause electricity to flow or to move. And without difference, you can't cause that to happen. The layers of the crystal in the pyramid, the rose granite core, the 2 different types, the limestone casings with the magnesium, and then you have the insulative layer as this. I forget his name now. From the Great Pyramid, not decoded the other one. You mentioned.
Oh, Giza power plant.
Yeah, the Giza power plant theory. That is correct. But see, that's what happens in a transistor. A transistor uses layers of different materials. It uses crystal, and now most transistors. In fact, in your computer, your Intel chip has 2.3 plus billion transistors, little tiny crystal transistors in it, to give you all of the colors and functions and abilities of your computer. But see, we went micro. Everything went nano, billion scale now, where everything is small. But the pyramids were giant crystal oscillators, and therefore have the ability to set up enormous amplitudes or sizes of oscillating waves that could not only send a message faster than light, but could send a person, I believe, an actual person faster than light to that ratio of vibrational star system that those 3 giant crystal oscillators at Giza represent, and that's Orion. And Orion's over 1,000 light years away. I mean, 1,000 light years. You're talking about a normal cell phone message taking over 1,000 years to get to Orion, but now that we know at Princeton and at Berkeley that they're using crystal oscillator material to send faster than light signals, we know that this is how they did it, and we know that the pyramids were electric. We know the Dendera light bulb is probably the ionizing power source, and that the Ark of the Covenant was probably an ultracapacitor, meaning it has the ability to store a huge amount of voltage in amperage in it for giant energy spikes to be delivered into the crystal oscillator. And the fact that the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant, which I'm revealing for the first time, are 5151, and so is the frequency of the base of the capstone of the pyramid, then, oh my God, what do those numbers mean if you're setting up oscillations in those precise numbers? Well, if you want to send a faster-than-light message out there, you have to know the vibrational codes of the destination. That's quantum entanglement.
Man.
At Cambridge University, you can Google this. Scientists just quantum entangled 2 diamonds, 2 rock diamonds, and they separate them, and they're communicating through action at a distance, which means faster-than-light communication. 2 diamonds communicating faster than light with each other. This is being done at mainstream universities. They just don't know that these ancient stone masters were using crystal oscillating technology to do the same thing, but they were communicating with different deities and goddesses and gods.
But David, we just got a couple minutes left. We're going to have to continue this conversation at another time. on Revelations, hopefully. Our bodies are also crystal oscillators, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, our bones are made of calcium, phosphorus, and silica, which are the same things you used in a transistor. A transistor is quartz with some phosphorus coating on it, and sometimes boron and other things that... So our bones are like our solid-state crystals, and our body carries minerals and other crystal material in a liquid state. So you have a liquid solid-state crystal.
But what you're basically laying out then is just the basis for beaming technology, for us to be able to beam to the Stargate through Orion's Gate, and from Orion's Gate to the throne, to the galactic center, wherever you want to go.
Absolutely. That's what I believe. I mean, it was kind of a combination of meditation and stone crystal technology that the ancient peoples used to make the Stargates happen. So that's it. I mean, it's from now on, it's about, what are the numbers of the frequencies that you put in series through a transmitting device to set up this type of technology. And already, my wife and I are having amazing out-of-body experiences when we run the transmitter in our room before sleep. I mean, unbelievable experiences are happening.
Incredible. David, we started out talking about your pendants. We've got a few minutes left. I want to make sure everybody knows about those, because we really do live in a pretty risky society. Our wireless society isn't warless yet, as promised, and it just kind of seems to be getting worse in terms of all of the potential damage. You put your laptop on your lap, you're in trouble. You walk around in this sea of just utter dissonant society. But you've come up with a way for people to kind of protect themselves from that, and not only protect themselves, not only run from it, but run to something really worthwhile of pursuing. So tell us about your pendants in the few minutes we have left.
Well, measuring the human body electricity, because we are liquid and solid-state crystals, we have voltage and microamperage in our fingertips on the surface. So we've measured over 1,000 people at trade shows, different body voltages, and when they interact with our harmonically treated crystal pendants that are treated with these, you can even get the Great Pyramid frequencies, vibrated into your pendant now. There is a significant change in aura camera photography and on the voltmeter and the microamp meter. So we have a real energy shift. Those and my wands are available at lightstreamtechnologies.com. So if lightstreamtechnologies.com, or you can just write David Sereda at hotmail.com to ask me questions.
Will you be at any upcoming shows, David?
Not for a while now. I mean, I really wanted to come see your show in Sedona this coming weekend, but my daughter has just got, she's only one right now, so she's zipping around the house, and it's hard for me to sit down for a long time somewhere else. So I plan to be doing a very in-depth workshop in Sedona, so stay tuned to that.
Very good. Well, yeah, and thank you for mentioning. I will be in Sedona this weekend, March 29th and 30th. Looking very much forward to it. Be presenting a lot of stuff David and I were just talking about, except would love to have David there commenting, so maybe we'll be able to find
Well, maybe I'll come up for a while, and I'll bring my wand so you can experience it.
Absolutely. That would be phenomenal.
And I really want to know what the kit is all about, so if there's a book, I want to get it.
Okay, for sure. Well, David, thank you so much for being my guest today. We're going to have to get together again here on Revelation soon to go back over some of this, because it is tremendously exciting, and the work you're doing is absolutely mind-blowing. So thank you once again.
Thank you, William.
This has been Revelations. Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Attending a William Henry presentation is unforgettable. Keep up with his schedule at williamhenry.net. You've been listening to William Henry's Revelations on Dreamland Radio. Next Wednesday, another cutting-edge revelation from William Henry.
For your voice. A couple of things. So I was in Memphis, actually, this past weekend, David, and a truck driver came up to me and he said, "You ever heard of David Sereda?" And I said, "Well, yeah, he's one of my favorite guests on Revelations. I think he does awesome work." And he says, "Well, I heard him talking one time in an interview about these pendants he makes, so I went and got one." And he said, as a truck driver, he's like a lot of truck drivers, he drives in a lot of pain, and you can't be doing drugs all the time if you're driving, so you need some way to overcome that pain. And he said he pops on your pendant, next thing he knows, he's feeling really, really good. So I just wanted to pass that along to you.
That is amazing. I get a lot of stories like that, and we don't make medical claims, but there are people who experience more lucid dreams, more energy. some people, when they lose their pendant, they're like drug addicts. I got to get another one.
Well, I want to talk with you in more detail about those in a minute, but first let's play a little.
Every Wednesday, William Henry's Revelations bring you a powerful half hour of information at the cutting edge of reality. Information that you cannot find anywhere else in the world. And now, here's William.
Everyone. I was talking with a friend the other day about his near-death experience, and he said he was propelled out of the Earth's atmosphere and into space. He said he could see distant galaxies and actually travel to them instantly at the speed of thought. And when he returned to Earth, he began investigating the power of thought and the possibility that it travels faster than light. Today, we are joined by someone who's been probing the question of faster-than-light communication and all kinds of other fascinating subjects. David Sereda is an inventor, filmmaker, ecologist, and I would say a visionary. That's why David's a frequent guest on Revelations and Dreamland, and we're happy to welcome him today. Welcome, David.
Good to be here, William. I hear you.
Wonderful to catch up on some other things. The last time you were on Revelations, David, we talked about the sun, and it was just before, actually, 2012. So was everything as we hoped it would be for 2012 and more, or what's your take these days?
Well, so much has happened. I mean, I'm following the sun like the stock market, but there seems to be a stream of earthquakes right now that's occurring. 2 7s in just 5 days. 7 pluses, one in Mexico and one in Chile. Grandly in places where there's not a lot of populace and not a lot of injuries, which is what we really want, because the Earth is definitely heading towards some Earth-shifting changes as we move into this new sun, this new sun cycle. When we end in 2013, we're going to end this we're going to peak in this great solar cycle. So there's still lots more to come. And when the sun transfers its electromagnetic energy to the planet, it not only affects tectonic plates and Earth change activity, but it affects our DNA as well. And I see on your website too, you're talking about this big galactic wave bubble that NASA's detected. And there's no doubt that even scientists in the movie Water that we distribute have proven that very weak magnetic field changes can influence and activate DNA. So what we're really hoping for on the positive side is a massive shift in our inability to access all of the circuits, chakras, crystal and liquid crystal circuits in our body, so we can access the higher functions of our brains and our consciousness. And that's probably the number one reason I think we're failing down here, why we haven't, fully developed alternative energy sources and developed flying saucers, which is one of my favorite personal engineering feats I'm working towards. But the reason is the epiphany hasn't happened in the brain. I mean, there are, granted, many, many scientists who have come close and who have developed some very astounding zero-point energy concepts. So the epiphanies are there. Socially, we don't seem to be quite ready for it. A lot of the corporate, structures don't seem to want this technology to come to the surface. But that is even changing now, too. You're starting to see... I was watching this amazing documentary on YouTube by Turge, the filmmaker from Norway, who made this amazing film about these light phenomena in Norway going on since the 80s, associated with UFOs as well as some kind of plasma lights. And he's